Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga.
Hari Bol.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Hare Krishna devotees, good morning. Welcome to this class. So we have a kind of a hybrid class today. I'm here at the temple. I'm going to plug in. I was thinking, Mother Shobharati, if I want to try sharing the screen, if that's okay.
Oh, that's fine.
I wanted to show on the screen back here for the devotees in the temple.
Sure.
The way we're going to chant today is our typical way, because I want the devotees online to be able to chant along. It's not on. I know we do it differently on Saturday, but I want to keep it this way for everybody's engagement at home. So I'll just chant the verse 3 times straight through, and then people at home can chant 3 times straight, or once straight through, and then people in the temple will chant one straight through, as opposed to line by line. Just give me a second here. There's 2 verses today. We'll read through both of them. Shishi Gaur Nitai ki, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki, Radha Sharda Bihari ki. Narayanam namaskritam naram chaiva narottavam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayet nasta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati utamashloke bhaktir bhavati naishtuki. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya.
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 Second, just want to make the font size bigger. So I'll go 3 times straight through, and then everybody will get a chance to chant 1 time straight through. Swalang krintam sham turanga yojitam ratam mergendra dwajam astrita purat rito ratashva dvipatati yuktayaya Swasenaya digvijayaya nirgataha swalang kritam sham. Excuse me, let's start it over. Swalang kritam shyam turanga yojitam ratam mergendra dwajam astrita purat Rito ratashva dvipati yuktaya swasenaya digvijayaya nirgataha swalang kritam sham turanga yojitam ratam mergendra dwajam astrita purat Rito ratashva dvipapati yuktayaya swasenaya digvijayaya nirgataha. Okay, please chant. Let's start with the people online, and then we'll go to the temple room.
Hare Krishna. Swalang kritam sham turanga yojitam Ratham Magendra Dwajam Ashritah Purat Vrito Rathashva Dipapati Yuktaya स्वसेनया दिग्विजयाय निर्गतः।
ज्वलं कृतं श्यामतुरङ्गयोजितं रथं मृदङ्गध्वजम् आश्रितप्रा वृतो रजास्तास्वद्विपपत्तियुक्तया स्वसेनया दिग्विजयाय निर्गता। हरे कृष्ण।
हरे कृष्ण। स्वलंकृतं श्याम तुरंगयोजितं रथं मृगेन्द्रध्वजम् आश्रितः पुरा वृतो रथाश्वद्विपत्तियुक्तया स्वसेनया दिग्विजयाय निर्गतः।
हरे कृष्णा। स्वलंकृतं श्यामतुरङ्गयोजितं रथं मृगेन्द्रध्वजम् आश्रितः पुरा वृतो रथश्वा दिवपातियुक्तया श्वासेनया दिग्विजयाय निर्गताः।
Devotees in the temple.
Valankitam sham durangoya jitam ratam mrigendra dvaja ashrita puran swagvipapati yudaya svasenaya digvijaya yanirgata. Swalankitam swayam turangayogitam ratham mridendra dhvajam ashrita pura dighorat rasva dispapati yuktaya vasenaya digvijaya nikyata.
Okay, go through the synonyms. Su alankritam, very well decorated. And this one we should know. Sham, black. Turanga, horses. Yojitam, tackled. Rat, this is another one we should know. Ratam, chariot. Migraindra, lion. Dvajam, flagged. Astrita, under the protection. Purat, from the capital. Vritaha, surrounded by. Rat, charioteers. Ashva, cavalry. Dvipapati, elephants. Yuktaya, thus being equipped. Swasenaya, along with infantry. Digvijayaya, for the purpose of conquering. Nirgataha, went out. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Maharaj Parikshit sat on a chariot drawn by black horses. His flag was marked with the sign of a lion. Being so decorated and surrounded by charioteers, cavalry, elephants, and infantry soldiers, he left the capital to conquer in all directions. Purport. Maharaj Parikshit is distinguished from his grandfather, Arjuna, for black horses pulled his chariot instead of white horses. He marked his flag with the mark of a lion, and his grandfather marked his with the mark of Hanumanji. A royal procession like that of Maharaj Parikshit, surrounded by well-decorated chariots, cavalry, elephants, and infantry, and band, not only is pleasing to the eyes, but is a sign of civilization that is aesthetic even on the fighting front. We'll go to the next verse, text number 12. I'll just do this one straight through for the sake of time. Vajravashwam ketumalam cha bharatam kotaram kurun kim puru shadini varshani vijitya jagri balim. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Maharaj Parikshit then conquered all parts of the earthly planet. Bhadrashva, Ketumala, Bharta, the northern Kuru, Kim Purusha, etc., and extracted tributes from their respective rulers. Purport. Bhadrashva, in the tract of land near Meru Parvata, and it extends from the Ganda Mandan Parvata to the saltwater ocean. There's a description of this Varsha in the Mahabharata, Bhishma Parva 7:14-18. The description was narrated by Sanjaya to Dhritarashtra. Maharaj Yudhisthira also conquered this Varsha, and thus the province was included within the jurisdiction of his empire. Maharaj Parikshit was formally declared to be the emperor of all lands, ruled by his grandfather. But still, he had to establish his supremacy while he was out of his capital to exact tributes from such states. Ketumala. This earth planet is divided into 7 dweepas, 7 oceans, and the central dweep, called Jambudweep, is divided into 9 varshas, or parts, by 8 huge mountains. Bharatvarsha is one of the above-mentioned 9 varshas, and Ketumala is also described as one of the above varshas. It is said that Ketumala Varsha, in Ketumala Varsha, women are most beautiful. This Varsha was conquered by Arjuna also. A description of this part of the world is available in the Mahabharata, Sabha 28:6. It is said that this part of the world is situated in the western side of the Meru Parvata, and the inhabitants of the province used to live up to 10,000 years, Bhishma Parva 6:31. Human beings in this part of the globe are golden color, and the women resemble the angels of heaven. The inhabitants are free from all kinds of diseases and grief. Bharatvarsha, this part of the world, is also one of the 9 varshas of Jambudweep. A description of Bharatvarsha is given in the Mahabharata, Bhishma Parva, chapter 9 and 10. In the center of Jambudweep is Ilavrata Varsha, and south of Ilavrata Varsha is Hari Varsha. The description of these varshas is given in the Mahabharata, Sabha Parva 28:7-8, as follows. I'll just skip over the Sanskrit. It is mentioned here that the women in these varshas are beautiful, and some of them are equal to the apsaras, or heavenly women. Uttarakuru. According to Vedic geography, the northernmost part of Jambudweep is called Uttarakuru Varsha. It is surrounded by the saltwater ocean from 3 sides and divided by Shringavan mountain from the here Manamaya Varsha. Purusha Varsha is stated to be situated north of the great Himalayan mountain, which is 80,000 miles in length and height, and which covers 16,000 miles in width. These parts of the world were also conquered by Arjuna, Sabha 28:1-2. The Kim Purushas are descendants of the daughter of Daksha. When Maharaj Yudhisthira performed a horse sacrifice yajna, the inhabitants of these countries were also present to take part in the festival. And they paid tributes to the emperor. This part of the world is called the Kim Purusha Varsha, or sometimes the Himalayan province, Himavati. It is said that Shukadev Goswami was born in these Himalayan provinces and then came to Bharatvarsha after crossing the Himalayan countries. In other words, Maharaj Parikshit conquered all of the world. He conquered all the continents adjoining all the seas, oceans, and directions, namely eastern, western, northern, and southern parts of the world. Om Agyanatimarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umliyatam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So when I first saw these verses, Mother Shobharati, I thought, my gosh, what could I possibly speak on other than the geography? And the geography being described, even though Srila Prabhupada gave all the references in the Mahabharata, if anybody wants to go back and study it more, I was very unfamiliar with, especially kind of these Vedic terms. Luckily, Srila Prabhupada had given lectures on both of these verses. And so going back and studying those lectures, was able to see what he emphasized in these particular, in these two particular verses. They're descriptive, very descriptive about the conquering of Maharaj Parikshit conquering. But so this is what Srila Prabhupada emphasized. He talked about the differences between the two chariots. He also talked about why it was important that Maharaj Parikshit had to conquer the world. After all, he was inheriting it from his grandfather, Maharaj Yudhisthira. But why did he have to go back and conquer it again? He brought up the term Digvijay, and there's there's other references to Digvijay that we'll talk about real quickly. And then the main driving point that Srila Prabhupada brought up was the fact that the king, the saintly king, was a representative of the Lord and a pure devotee of the Lord. And they took on this service as a service to the Lord, and that devotees will do anything for the Lord, even though it means inconvenience for them. So these are the things we'll run through real quickly. So the flag of Hanuman, that was on Arjuna's chariot. And on Parikshit Maharaj's chariot, he had a different flag. That was the flag of a lion. And Srila Prabhupada says this is actually Nrsingadev. So just like a devotee, when we see a lion, what do we think of? Nrsingadev. We see devotees wear pictures of a lion on their Nrsingadev's face on the t-shirt, or we see a picture of a lion like in the temple, or on your car you may hang a picture of Nrsingadev. We see the lion, we think of Nrsingadev. So Srila Prabhupada said also, because Parikshit Maharaj was a devotee, he had lion, that of Nrsingadev, for lion is the king of the jungle, and therefore strength. So Hanuman enjoyed the flag of Arjuna, and there's a backstory behind that. Arjuna went up to the celestial planets in order to acquire some weapons, and during that time, the Pandavas were traveling through the Bandharik ashram. Floating down the Alakananda river was this beautifully scented, highly intoxicating aroma of this 1,000-petaled lotus. And when Draupadi saw it, she went to Bhima and said, you know, this is just so beautiful. I must have more. And then Bhima said, surely. So he went charging up the mountain to the top of, you know, we're trying to find more of these beautifully scented lotus flowers for Draupadi, because she wanted to take them back with her. And as he was charging up the mountain, he was letting out his battle cry. You know, his Bhima, of course, was known for his superior Herculean strength. And he was chasing away the animals in the mountains, just trying to get there, I guess, as fast as he can to return. And he at one point, he was traveling down the trail, and this big monkey was just sitting right there. And so he had to stop, and he said, and the monkey said right to him, he says, "Why are you yelling so much? What? You know, you're scaring everybody away. This part of the world is very peaceful. You know, this is a place where no mortal beings come. This is where the great sages, you know, reside. You know, you shouldn't be behaving this way." You know, Bhima got very upset about this. He says, "Look, just get out of my way." The monkey said, No, just sit with me, relax, you know, have some fruit and enjoy. And he says, "Just jump over me." And Bhima said, "I can't jump over you because that will breach etiquette, and I'm not supposed to step over any other living being, you know, just show respect." And he says, "Well, I'm too tired and I'm in the middle of resting, so just lift my tail." So Bhima tried to lift his tail, and it's just a monkey. Bhima was uprooting trees with his hands. And as he was trying to lift his tail, he realized that he couldn't lift his tail. And then it dawned on him, this is the place where no mortal beings go. I can't lift his tail. He's stronger than my strength. It must be my brother, Hanuman. They're both the sons of the wind god, Vayu. And then he started, you know, they got up and he embraced them, and he changed his whole attitude and composure upon seeing that it was Hanuman. And during their conversation, Hanuman assured him, he says, you know, soon there'll be a battle. And on that battle, I will appear on the flag of your brother, Arjuna. And I will be present on that flag. And during the battle, when you do your battle cry and roar, I will join you, and we will strike, you know, terrifying fear into all your enemies. So Hanuman was personally present on Arjuna's flag. So it wasn't just an emblem or a symbol, but he was personally present there. So Parikshit, why did he have to conquer? So there were two reasons that were given. One is that he had to prove himself. So this wasn't just simply an inheritance. Srila Prabhupada said, you know, that we've, you know, often, you know, hear about this. You have to be qualified not by birth, but by qualification, by your character, by your activities. Not simply that, oh, yes, my father was this, so therefore I am this. So even though Parikshit Maharaj was expertly trained by the Pandavas and was well equipped to take over the position of emperor, to set the example that if anybody had issue with him, or anybody that wanted to challenge him or thought that they should be in position, that he had to go out and do it for himself. Otherwise, you know, they could be criticized. Oh, he just sits back and he just inherited this. Other reason is that he had to make sure that the whole world was Krishna conscious. And this was to basically remind the people of the world of the dharmic principles that were being carried forth from Maharaj Yudhisthira to down to his now administration or regime, that it wasn't going to change. And he wanted to make sure that all the different parts of the world that were beginning to either deviate or fall away, he had to bring them back again. So Srila Prabhupada writes, and I'll read a bunch of different statements from Srila Prabhupada's lecture. Again, I was completely dependent on Srila Prabhupada's lecture here because I had no idea where to go with these verses. Srila Prabhupada wrote, The government is advocating you drink, eat meat, you have prostitution and gambling, and then give me tax. And therefore my business is finished. So Parikshit Maharaj was not like that. Parikshit Maharaj has conquered all these places to serve Krishna, to teach Krishna consciousness. Therefore, he conquered. So this conquering of other countries was not like Napoleon conquering or Hitler conquering. No, it is evident from the character of Parikshit Maharaj. The idea was to keep the whole world Krishna conscious. If certain countries, certain portions of the world would not be Krishna conscious, then this king would go and chastise them. So the king is going to other countries, conquering. It did not mean to acquire some possession, land possession. No, that was not the aim. The king's duty was to subdue the miscreants who would create a disturbance. So in order to save the world, to become hellish, the king was alert. And Srila Prabhupada says something important here. He says, that is also bhakti. A lot of times we don't think of that in those terms. He says, this is also bhakti, because what is he doing? He's trying to save the world from being, fallen into these traps of delusion. Because the whole world has a natural plan, and that plan is to bring everyone back to Godhead. That is the role of the king in order to help facilitate that activity. Hare Krishna. So we learn in the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna descends into this world. And what does he say? Paritanaya sarunam vinishaya chaduskritam dharma samstarpatartaya sambhavami yuge yuge. To annihilate the miscreants, to give pleasure to devotees, and to reestablish religious principles. So we read in that purport that Srila Prabhupada says that Krishna's real business is paritanaya sadhunam, to give pleasure to his devotees. That is what Krishna really wants. That to kill the demons, he actually has different agents who do that. And to reestablish principles of Dharma, he has different agents to do that. But when he comes, it's really to enliven and give pleasure to the devotees. So sometimes he comes and kills the demons, like Kamsa, he come and killed Damsa and all the different demons of Vrindavan, which personally came to attack him, he killed. Jai Shishi Gaurnitai ki, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki, Shishi Radha Sharad Bihari ki. Jai. But he has these agents, and those agents are a lot of times the rulers or the kings. In this case, the Rajarshis, the Raja Rishis, the saintly kings. And that's how Krishna executed this idea of Dharma samstarpanartaya, of reestablishing the principles of religion, in eliminating the demons. So on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, all these kings, from all different parts of the world had assembled. And Krishna could have killed them all. But what did he do? He wanted the Pandavas to kill them. So that was the agency in which Krishna executes these activities. And it's not a very, as we'll come to see, it's not this service people would naturally want to sign up for. But this is the way Krishna executes his activities. And he uses his pure devotees to do these. Dig Vijaya. So this word means, Vijay means victory or to conquer. And Digvi means in all directions. So to conquer in all directions. So this is a name for Maharaj Parikshit because he went to the north, the south, the east, to the west and reestablished the reign of what was Maharaj Yudhisthira's empire, and then made it his own. There's another Digvijay in Chaitanya Charitamrita, and that was a philosopher by the name of Keshava Kashmiri. Srila Prabhupada mentions there's different types of ways of conquering. One is by force, one is through logic and debate. And if a person would conquer another person in debate, then those people would become his disciples. In the same way, if an emperor would, conquer another land, everybody in that land would then become part of their kingdom. So this Digvijay, he was known as Keshava Kashmiri, was known as one of the most famous debaters and logicians within the land of India. And he would travel to the south, the north, the east, the west. And one day he came to Navadvip, because Navadvip was one of the capitals of learning during Lord Chaitanya's time. And when he came, Lord Chaitanya, known as Nimai Pandit at that time, he was only 16 years old. All the elder scholars, they said they didn't want to debate Keshava Kashmiri, or at least they didn't want the first crack at him. So they said, let's just put Nimai Pandit up and request Nimai Pandit to go. Because if he loses, we'll say, well, he was only a 16-year-old boy. And then we can learn his tricks of what of how he interacts and how he debates. So there's really no loss. But then if he wins, then obviously, it becomes very glorious that, Navadvip has the person who defeated Digvijay. So Nimai Pandit went and met Keshava Kashmiri, and they met by the Ganges. And so he said, so Nimai Pandit requested him, he says, why don't you please compose some poetry glorifying the Mother Ganga? So Keshava Kashmiri very quickly composed 100 shlokas. And then he started reciting those 100 shlokas, just rolling off his tongue very beautifully. And then when he was done, Lord Chaitanya said, very, very nice, very beautiful, He said, but however, in the 64th shloka that you mentioned, can you go over that again? Can you repeat that? And as he's repeating that, he realized there was some grammatical imperfection. That Keshava Kashmiri. And then right away he thought, how can this boy, I just rattled them off just like that. And he could remember the 64th shloka that I said, and that there was some grammatical imperfection. And then he was stumped. And he went back that night and he was like completely perplexed. After all, he was the greatest. And what happens, pride sets in, right? I debated that person, I defeated them. We have to be careful of that, because sometimes we get into this idea of debating, and I know more, and I know more shlokas, and I can rattle off better than you can, and I can. So ultimately, it's all up to Krishna. We're just conveying, we're just conduits of Krishna, we're just servants. But if we think we're the doers and that we're the ones that are actually smart, for me comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness, Krishna says. So it's all coming from Krishna. But this Keshava Kashmiri thought it was actually him doing it. So his pride got defeated, and that night he had a dream, and Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, appeared and says, do not worry. You were defeated, yes, but you were defeated by the Supreme Lord. So that was one Digvijay. Another Digvijay is Parikshit Maharaj. And then Srila Prabhupada says something very interesting. He says, similarly, for a preacher, that Digvijay is a Digvijay. A preacher should go from country to country, from village to village, town to town, and and say, here is our philosophy, here is our God. We can prove there is God. Where are you? And no one can deny it. That is Digvijay. So he wanted the Krishna consciousness movement to establish this principle of conquering and bringing people to Krishna. Tax collection. So why was it stated here that he had to establish taxes? And Srila Prabhupada mentions, in order to show subordination. So it wasn't because Maharaj Parikshit was in lack of anything and therefore they had to establish taxes. A lot of times we think in terms of taxes as a bad thing. You know, why do you have to extract things from me? So you conquer the land and then you have to, take something away from me. You have to take some wealth. So Srila Prabhupada writes about this and he says, tax tributes, the king, the emperor, would conquer a country and levy tax. They must give something, some token. It doesn't matter, even if £1 or $1 per year, but something must be given. That means that the other person agrees to become subordinate. Just like according to the Rent Act, a poor man must pay something. It may be. Otherwise, what claim do you have on their land? So again, this wasn't about conquering land in order to exploit. Maharaj Parikshit's purpose was to bring about righteousness and purity. Now, kind of where all this kind of culminates back to is this idea that a devotee will take on an uncomfortable position for the pleasure of the Lord. So you can only imagine the headache of conquering or being emperor of the world. If you've ever been in charge of even just a small task, you just realize, oh my gosh, there's just a lot of headaches that go on. So Srila Prabhupada writes here, he says, so Vaishnava does not mean he cannot do anything else except chanting. That is, of course, the supreme objective, Shravanam Kirtanam. But that is very experienced life, experienced Vaishnava, that he can concentrate only on chanting. So his devotees are also like that. They have to execute the mission of Krishna. Just like Parikshit Maharaj here. He is a great devotee of Krishna. So he is going out as a soldier to fight. Similarly, Dhruva Maharaj and Prahlad Maharaj, they also fought because they were kings. So it was their duty to subdue and conquer the demons. Not that because one is a Krishna devotee, he should not do any other thing. If required, a devotee can do anything as ordered by Krishna. As Krishna ordered Arjuna to fight. Arjuna was personally not inclined to fight. Why? Because he was a Vaishnava. He didn't want to cause distress. When Krishna inquired, what is your decision? He said, yes, I will do what you want me to do. I must fight. So, this is particularly applicable to us, because when we think in terms of service, Srila Prabhupada is stressing here that in many cases, it's simply just not, you just sit and chant, that you actually have to take up some activity, some responsibility. And sometimes that responsibility may not be what you had intended or what you had thought. So if it's given directly by Krishna, as it was to Arjuna, you must fight. Why should I fight? Why not create peace? Why not make everybody into devotees and chant? And Krishna says, no, this is my plan. This is what I want you to do. I want you to fight. I brought all these people here and we want to rid the earth of the burden that is she's currently undergoing, and I've accumulated everybody. Ultimately, we know who does the killing. It's ultimately Krishna. There's not a blade of grass can move without Krishna. In the universal form, Krishna shows everybody's just pouring into his mouth in the form of time. So the challenge comes. This is where the challenge comes. The material nature means dissension and disagreement, especially in Kali Yuga. In our class on Tuesday, that was what it was about, that no matter where it happens in Kali Yuga, there just seems to always be some problem, some dissension. So to be fixed in your service, despite disagreement, dissension, because responsibility will mean that. You can only imagine, again, the burden that an emperor of a whole land has to take on. What to speak of a department of some activity. But no matter what you do, no matter what the cause is, well, we should not be surprised when we find some disagreement and dissension. If you want to start a Little League baseball team, you're going to have this side and you're going to have that side, and some people are going to think you should run it this way, and some people think you should run it that way. If you form a co-op that sells organic produce, locally grown, you're going to get some people, good causes where you think everybody would unify. You're going to start getting this side and you're going to get that side. Parents come together and they become the worst because everybody starts fighting over their kids and this teaching philosophy and that teaching philosophy. No matter what you do in this world, even spiritual endeavors, you're going to actually get dissension and disagreement. Especially in the material world. Especially, they say, in Kali Yuga, because what happens in Kali Yuga? The grip of the grip of the modes of material nature, what happens? They become stronger. These ropes that bind us, they become stronger. Goodness, passion, and ignorance. So when you say, oh, it's Kali Yuga, sometimes devotees say, oh, what can you expect? It's Kali Yuga. Well, what does that mean? It means that Maya, material nature, which manifests in her qualities of binding us to this passion and ignorance, the grip becomes stronger. So how do we go beyond that? How do we, the key is we have to transcend. And that was the message of the Bhagavad Gita. We have to transcend these modes of material nature. If we really want to act as the agent of Krishna, if we really want to do Krishna consciousness, Krishna conscious work, preach the message of Krishna consciousness, take on when these disagreements and challenges, they come, we have to challenge ourselves to transcend. Otherwise, we'll simply just be acting on the material platform. That is our challenge. We can understand this is also the challenge, of the great kings, and that's why they were so trained, not just in government, not just in, how to rule and how to fight in war, but what did Krishna say? Evam parampara praptam. This science was handed down through the chain of saintly kings, and they understood and ruled it in that way. Beginning in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna didn't say, I passed this down to all the sadhus, and then the sadhus, no, he said it was passed down to the saintly kings. Because they had, in order to be effective, they had to be able to transcend. 2 verses from the Bhagavad Gita I'll share before we end. Chapter 14. When the embodied being is able to transcend these modes associated with the mundane body, he can become free from birth, death, old age, and their distresses, and then can enjoy nectar even in this life. In the 7th chapter, this divine energy of mind consisting of the modes of material nature is very difficult to overcome. But one who is surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it or transcend it. We're living in a world of the modes of nature, and those modes of nature are going to condition us. They generate anger, they generate aggression, they generate disappointment and sadness. They generate all these different emotions and feelings that we have based on our expectations to want to enjoy. The only way out of this, we're in an ocean. We have to be pulled out. We have to transcend and rise above it. Only then we'll be able to actually experience, freedom from it, trying to experience it within the modes, we'll just become more and more entangled. Okay, I'll end here. See if we have any questions or comments from both the online audience as well as devotees here in the temple. Hare Krishna. Any takeaways?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Is somebody at the temple wanting to say something? Let them go ahead and.
Okay, yes.
Thank you for your class, Prabhu. I heard one description of tolerance being that we continue on with serving Krishna regardless of the external circumstance. It sounded like it aligned very much so with your point of like when the difficulties, how do we still perform the service? My question would be how like we can practice that, like what we're depending on internally or maybe externally to keep us healthy or motivated, or just with the proper energy, the proper motivation, the proper ability to continue.
So the question was about tolerance and how do we, just repeating it so they can hear. You know, in order to move past and work through the modes of material nature, to practice tolerance, and how do we practice that? And it's very important because that is actually one of the things I had pulled up here. I didn't get to. Srila Prabhupada was speaking about this principle of, in the material world, you're always going to have dissension and disagreement. He says in the material world, there are varieties, but there is no agreement. In the spiritual world, there are varieties, but there is complete agreement. That is the difference. So in the material world, and then Srila Prabhupada says, then he begins to quote, he says that there's this verse, Trinadapi Sunuchena Toro Vasahishnina Amanina Manadina Kirtaniya Sadahari. And he says, this is the only way which we will be successful if we're able to learn to embody this verse. Sometimes we like to chant this verse, but we don't like to apply this verse. And sometimes it becomes a little maybe too elevated for us to grasp and practice, because we may not be able to fully give ourselves to it. But the truth in that verse, once you chant the holy name in a humble state of mind, considering oneself to be lower than the straw on the street, more tolerant than the tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and we should be ready to offer all respects to others. And in that state of mind, we should then chant the holy name. That state of mind, we should then perform our devotional service. We must always remember this verse, and we must be tolerant as the tree, as we execute the Krishna consciousness movement, Srila Prabhupada says. Without that mentality, we cannot be successful. So Srila Prabhupada understood that this principle of tolerance has to be there. And we have to have certain checks. So we have to know what our triggers are. When we get to the point where we become upset, discouraged, frustrated, we have to kind of know when that's starting to set in. We have to do an evaluation of ourselves and say, okay, it's starting to happen, right? And then we have to begin to start processing. Okay, what is Krishna saying? Okay, I have to practice this principle of tolerance. How does it apply here? Then we have to remind ourselves, like for me, this word transcend means like it's one of these words that will then trigger myself to say, when I think of transcend, I think of somebody like who's saturated in the ocean and they rise out of the ocean. And so a lot of times I tell myself in my mind, you have to transcend. You have to transcend. And then I pray to Krishna, please help me transcend this situation. Please don't allow me to react. Please allow me to have self-control. Why? Because I want to see the situation not because I'm being pulled into it based on my own material desires. I want to be able to navigate through this as an instrument in your service, Krishna. I want to come out of this as an instrument of inspiration, not an instrument of conflict. So it's the self-reflection, but we have to kind of know what our buttons are, our triggers are. What are those things that really bother us the most? Evaluate them and know when they set in. We got to pray. We got to evaluate. We have to apply the philosophy. Sometimes we chant, but even in those times of chanting, we still become angry, become frustrated. The mind has to become strengthened. The intelligence has to become strengthened in order to control the mind. We know the example of the reins of the chariot, right? Unless the controller of the chariot holds those reins very tight, if he lets go of the ropes, the horses will just run freely. So those horses are like the senses. The reins are the mind. And the charioteer who's guiding them is the intelligence. So that intelligence becomes strong through the process of hearing and chanting. Chanting will open us up, it'll cleanse, it allows Krishna to enter in and cleanse the heart. And the philosophy of Krishna consciousness will strengthen the intelligence to be able to separate the reality from illusion and be able to point this out. I mean, think about how many people actually even know this. They don't. They just react to whatever they're feeling, what impetuses they have. They just react. Krishna shows us the pathway to rise above. Thank you for Hare Krishna. Anything else? Kalpesh Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Excellent class. Please accept my humble obeisances. You covered somebody asked from the temple that question. It was running. When principles are being oppressed for the saintly person, you answered very well how to handle that situation. So that was running one of the question in my mind. But when we look at the society level, we divide those into theistic and atheistic. There are two categories, and in the theistic also we see depending on the modes of goodness or ignorance or passion, not all are prominent at the same time. So how do we bring the other devotees, like they may be our devotees or they may not be devotees, we cannot take that judgment, but when we are trying to spread the message of Bhagavad Gita and Krishna consciousness, we do get that disagreement and conflicts sometimes. And in that situation, if we wanted to bring that person or that community to saintly person, how would that be propagated? That's my question.
Can you just restate the question really? Just that last part. I heard what you said. I'm just trying to get the crux to the question.
Okay. So we do agree that in this current time also there are saintly person, right, in the society. And if that is so, then but that message is being not transparent enough to totally to the world. And we are the instruments for that. And to do that, how do we make sure that we are we are doing it right to bring towards the entry movement towards temple, or it could be bringing to Prabhupada in that case, so that they can hear and chant.
Right. So, and thank you for the question. So two simple things. One, we have to be strong ourselves. We have to be Krishna conscious ourselves. And then we have to go out and we have to spread Krishna consciousness, because people won't learn about Krishna consciousness if we're not making it available to them. So just like you were out, a couple of weeks ago, you're distributing books. That is a wonderful way to do it. And there are many other avenues in order to get these Krishna conscious principles out there. And we should be able to be creative with it in order to find avenues and ways to reach as many people as we can in order to bring them into the association of Krishna, to remind them, or rather to reawaken their dormant love for God. But we also, by our personal example, so we have to become strong ourselves. Otherwise, they'll think, what is so great? You're a nonsense, but yet you're coming out and trying to preach. So we also have to be exemplary in our character. And then, so both of them together. It's like you have to be right at home, and then you have to go out and also bring people and also present Krishna consciousness. So going out, performing Sankirtan, that was the method Lord Chaitanya gave us, chanting the holy names. Bolo Krishna, Bhaja Krishna, Koro Krishna Shiksha. Chant Krishna's names, teach people to worship Krishna, and teach people about the instructions of Krishna. So that is it, and you open that up, it becomes very big, but in a nutshell, that is it.
This class I have to hear 3 or 4 times again, because it is so nicely presented and very well explained. So thank you very much. And you also brought wonderful point that many times I also see that when people talk about bhakti movement or even a bhakti, they don't try to go out and said like trying to distribute this principle. They think, okay, if I can do on my own, like just independently, then it's okay. But it's not that Prabhupada made it clear, through Parikshit Maharaj example. That is also a bhakti.
So following on Srila Prabhupada's footsteps, he wanted us to also conquer the world with the love of Krishna consciousness. He didn't ask us to join or build a military army, just a spiritual army. So we're very grateful about that. We don't have to be like Maharaj Parikshit, and we can understand his sacrifice, the service that he had to do. But we can do our part in spreading Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan, moving, following in the footsteps of his divine grace. Okay, we'll end here. Thank you all for your attention. Have a wonderful Krishna conscious day. I want to give a special recognition there to Bhakta Bob. It's great to see you on this call. We've all been praying for you, Bhakta Bob, for your recovery. Hope you're doing well, but it's great to see you here today.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you to everyone. I really appreciate it. Everyone that I've been speaking to, I've just been so thankful, and it's just been so sweet, so nice, the outreach and the prayers. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
Jai. Hare Krishna. Get well soon. And then tonight we have our Srila Prabhupada Leela night. It starts at 7 o'clock on the same Zoom channel. And tomorrow is the appearance day of His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master. There'll be a program at the temple starting at 11 o'clock. If you want to come and attend, it's a half-day fast as well. Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna.